Hey church, this is Vince Miller. Thank you so much for joining me for some more time right here in God's Word. Today we begin the book of Nehemiah. I'm super excited about this. Nehemiah chapter 1. I'm going to read the first 3 verses here. You're going to love this story. It reads, "The words of Nehemiah, the son of Hacaliah." And we don't know a lot about Hacaliah, if nothing at all. Now it happened in the month of Chislev. That would have been about November or December, so essentially right now on our calendars. This is a Babylonian calendar, of course. In the 20th year, I was in Susa, the citadel or the fortress, that Hanani, one of my brothers or Jewish brothers, came with certain men from Judah. And I asked them concerning the Jews who escaped and who had survived the exile concerning Jerusalem. They said to me, "The remnant there in the province who had survived the exile is in great trouble and shame. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down and its gates are destroyed by fire." So, fellas, like I mentioned yesterday, Nehemiah's story is going to pick up right after Ezra's story at around 444 BC. After Ezra brought a group of people back to Jerusalem, Nehemiah followed with another group. So the 3 stories of Zerubbabel and Ezra and Nehemiah are all very connected here. And this all happened under King Artaxerxes' reign in the Persian Empire, including a region that is called Judah, where Jerusalem is located, where these walls have fallen down. Now, Nehemiah's story takes place right between 444 BC and 432 BC. And in Nehemiah's story, King Artaxerxes is kind of presented favorably, but you need to know he is a very tough man and tough leader. In fact, he killed his brother, who was the rightful heir to the throne of Persia. And then just before Nehemiah's story here, he had squashed several significant uprisings in Persia. Yet God appointed Nehemiah for a very special task under a powerful, non-believing king. Still, we discover Artaxerxes trusts him and appoints him governor of Judah because, well, he knew that it needed special leadership and fortification during his reign. So the story is going to take place in 2 metropolitan cities. One is Susa and the other is Jerusalem, both mentioned in these verses here. Susa was the winter headquarters for the Persian Empire. It was where the snowbirds went. It was set about 150 miles from the Persian Gulf. Nehemiah started out there essentially as a high-ranking official that served in the court of the king, which we'll discover next. But when he was appointed to governorship of Judah, he then moved to Jerusalem, because that's where most of the story is actually going to take place, in Nehemiah chapter 2 all the way down to chapter 13. Now, Judah was a relatively small area. It was about 900 square miles at this time, so it was easily managed from just one central city. That would be Jerusalem. Now, surrounding Jerusalem was all this anti-Semitic activity and powers that didn't like the idea of Nehemiah coming there to rebuild Jerusalem's wall, because they knew if the walls were built up, the Jews would fortify the city and become powerful again. So without the walls, the Jews would remain vulnerable, and that's what they wanted. And the people that were a part of this were 3 local leaders. They were Sanballat from Samaria, Tobiah from Ammon, and Geshem from Arabia. They were all very unhappy about what the Persian king was allowing him to do. They governed the land that surrounded Judah, Samaria to the north, Ammon to the east, and Arabia to the south. They didn't want Jerusalem to regain its strength and become a dominant city again. Interesting, isn't it? Because all you got to do is fast forward to our time today. The regions of Israel and Gaza and Lebanon and Iran are often at the center of all these complex geopolitical issues and tensions. Just like in the time of Nehemiah, these areas are still marked by historical grievances, religious significance, and strategic importance, of course. The modern day struggles are just echoing all of the past and this continued quest for things like identity, security, and survival amidst external pressure and conflict. Now, in the story of Nehemiah, we witness a single man and a spiritual leader who is willing to press into all these issues. Inspiring, isn't it? A man who persevered in his God-ordained mission despite the internal challenges and the external threats. And these are the men that we desire to be, that few ever become, because they fail to press into the internal and external tensions. Yet, This man, Nehemiah, and his sold-out faith in God and his practical skill and ability in leadership enabled one of the most extraordinary expedited building projects of all time, the rebuilding of Jerusalem's walls. And in many ways, Nehemiah's spiritual, practical leadership inspired us as men. But this narrative has a practical and personal application for all of us, gentlemen. It is a reminder for believing men who face their own rebuilding projects and spiritual opposition, be it something like a personal challenge or relational pressure or spiritual battles that you can overcome with God. The book of Nehemiah teaches us about the importance of endurance and faith, resilience and leadership, and the timeless struggle for identity in turbulent times of our life in a very combatant world. So fellas, I want you to dial in as we study this book because you are going to love this book. I love you guys. I'll see you right back here again.